Surah Al-Mursalat. Learning objectives. Assalamu alaikum, my friends. How are you? It's great to see you again. Today our lesson will be about Surah Al-Mursalat. Let's begin. Let's start by learning how to recite the first part of it, from the first verse to the 15th verse. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. By those winds sent forth successively, and those blowing violently, and those scattering rain clouds widely, and by those angels fully distinguishing truth from falsehood, and those delivering revelations, and then excuses, and giving warnings. Surely what you are promised will come to pass. So when the stars are put out, and the sky is torn apart, the mountains are blown away, the messenger's time to testify comes up. For which day has all this been set? For the day of the final decision. And what will make you realize what the day of decision is? Who on that day to the deniers? Well done. Now let's learn the meaning of some important terms mentioned in this blessed surah. The day of final decision is the day of judgment. Who is a place in hellfire? Now let's start interpreting these noble verses. After studying the meaning of the noble words and important lessons, we find that Surah Al-Mursalat begins with an oath. The first part of this oath is the oath of vicious winds unleashed upon the disbelievers and the destructive winds sent upon those who disbelieve, engaging in wrongdoing and arrogantly oppose the messengers of Allah Almighty. The next oath is swearing by the angels, who by the command of Allah Almighty send the winds upon whomsoever He wills. The oath after that swears by the angels that descend by the command of Allah Almighty upon the messengers, by whom Allah distinguishes between truth and falsehood. The next oath is by the angels that receive the revelation from Allah Almighty and descend with it to the prophets. After the oath, Allah Almighty informs us in these noble verses that the resurrection, reckoning, punishment, and rewards will definitely happen. It is the promise of Allah Almighty to all of humanity. Then the noble verses discuss various events from the day of resurrection, revealing that the stars will lose their light on that day. It also reveals that the sky will crack open on the day of judgment. Following that, Allah Almighty emphasizes who on that day to the deniers, which is repeated in the surah as a warning of the punishment for the disbelievers. This verse is frequently repeated throughout this surah to encourage those who believe in the day of judgment by promising them reward. Now which of you can recite and properly interpret the verses 1 to 15 of Surah Al-Mursalat? Well done, my friends. Now, let's learn how to recite another part of Surah Al-Mursalat from verse 16 to verse 19. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Did we not destroy earlier disbelievers? And we will make the later disbelievers follow them. This is how we deal with the wicked, who on that day to the deniers. Well done. Now let's start interpreting these noble verses. We find that the noble verses indicate Allah's punishment for previous nations that denied their messengers. The verses remind humans of their fate if they deny the messengers of Allah Almighty and persist in their disbelief. From the verses, we find that Allah Almighty assures us that His promise never fails and it's bound to happen. So Muslims should have absolute faith in everything that is stated in the Holy Quran. Just as Allah Almighty destroyed the previous nations for their denial of the messengers, He also destroyed the disbelievers who reject the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. This happened during different battles with the Muslims during the era of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his companions, may Allah be pleased with them. Now which of you can recite and properly interpret the verses 16 to 19 of Surah Al-Mursalat? Well done, my friends.